Hey fellow OQLIS users, this is Sean Winterburn, Marketing Manager and co-owner of OQLIS. Today what we're going to do is chat a little bit around the space called automation, or the functionality called automation within the OQLIS platform. If I can quickly maybe give just a high-level view of what it is. It's about data-driven triggers. So in layman's terms, if you have any data that changes on a regular basis in live format, and any triggers are breached, whether the trigger is created manually or if it's a running average of your data, then a trigger can be sent either within a post request back into your database to do an action, a real tangible action, or it can be sent an alert in various different ways to your user base. So it's a very powerful tool in terms of what do you do with data and how do you make it work for you. It's not just about looking at the data and seeing what it's about, but actual live in application, tangible outcomes that you can program into OQLIS, which is really fantastic for a lot of our users. Good then. So if we want to create an automation, we really need three components to make this automation work effectively. The first would need a KPI, or key performance indicator, that we set up. Secondly, we would need the automation setup, giving the rules that makes and breaks the automation. And thirdly, we need to create a schedule. Now this schedule is then when the KPI and the automation setup is tested in the database. And this is then can either be done periodically, like daily, minutes, hours, whatever the case may be, what makes sense in terms of that data-driven trigger that we created within the system. Okay, so let's start with opening the home page where we go into the spaces. And what we're going to do is, we'll see here is the space for the sales that we've created earlier in one of the other videos. We're going to click onto that, and what it's going to bring up is then all the different areas with all the different areas within the dashboard. And what we've seen here is we've created within our previously our margin, and if we look at our margin, this then tells us that the margin on average is at 29.53%. So that is really the test. So we're gonna create a rule with the margin in place, and basically we're gonna then test it against what we call the latest order margin. So what the latest order margin is tells us that there's an average order, and then on this last time that this data was created was in 2017, 07/28, the margin was at 31%. So what it's doing is you're creating two different areas. One is the latest margin date, and then the average margin over the time. And what we're going to do is then create an automation that tests this to say, what is the latest automation date with this KPI that we've created here, and at that time it is 31.4%, versus what the average margin is, and then do an action around it. So that will really be then a test, and the use case will be is that you can test various KPIs against each other and then create an automation behind it, which then you have either a flat margin rate in case of sales, or you have performance, production, whatever the case may be within your space. So let's just get going into how we're going to put it all together, that we've got the two KPIs, which is the average margin and the last margin that we've received on our sales stock. Start with this next question. Okay, so we've created our two KPIs. Now the next step, what we said, is to create the automation setup. So what we're going to do is we're going to move from the single KPI, which is the average margin, we're going to go into the automation side. And this screen then will help us then set up what this automation means. What we've already done in this is we've created the sales below a certain margin alert, and I'm just going to go through it because it's easier to explain it like this. So what we've done is we've created a name, we've created this, we've called it the sales below a margin alert. The value to test is that single KPI, which is the margin, and you'll see there within that single KPI we've also got the second area that we can test, which is the latest order, which we'll use a bit later. We've set a criteria, which could be choose a comparator, equals, not equals, greater than, and we've said less, so the margin must be less. It's a dynamic, so we can choose that it's either a static. If it was a static, we'd put a value in there to say, for example, if it's under 30 or it's under 20 or whatever the case may be. So it's a static value that we put in, but we've created a dynamic value, which means we are then testing it against the latest ordered margin, and we want to make that as part of the schedule called the automation. So we'll go through the automation side and explain that as well, which we've already done in the previous, but we'll give a little bit of a higher update. So that's the first part. So you've created the rule. So what it's doing, it's giving it a name, it's testing it against a single KPI, which is the margin, and then it's dynamically testing it when it's at a test criteria, which is less than, and the latest order value. So when the margin is less than the latest order value, then we're going to set in an automation. And then on the left-hand side, on the right-hand side here is what the automation actions are actually going to do. So we can create two here. It's a email or HTTP request, which is a post request. We've also already created two, so you can create various actions that you want to do this, whether you just want a single action of an email being sent to a user or a group of users, or you want to actually write something into another database, or you want to create some other sort of actions. Gives you the flexibility to be able to create various outputs because the data has breached or the information has changed that you would want it to do. So let's just go into the first one, which is the sale margin alert, which is an email. So what we've done is here we've created a subject title of the email, which is margin is below 30%. External, or the users that are going to get it. This could be anybody from, I've created for Andrew and myself, and then the body of the email, which is then says the current margin has dropped below, and it's compared. We've put some smart creation in there, and with the value of which your margin will be, and we'll show you what the mail looks like when it comes through. And then you can associate it also into that. You can put its own dashboard in there, which is the monthly sales dashboard, and we can save it, and then basically the mail then will be sent out when the breach happens to those two users with that title and a text, and it will give you the ability to have that that email, or you'll be able to click to go to the dashboard that we've created earlier. The second part, which is a little bit more technical, obviously. So what it's doing, it's creating an API action. So then it can basically write into any API, obviously a bi-directional API that has been set up within your data. So you want to be trusted with that. There's two components of the API action. Firstly, you would send a pre-request action, and this would obviously be, or not obvious, it would be the fact that you need to log on into that server or log into that API and make sure that your credentials are right. So you then fill in where it goes to get that KPI, the username, the code, the token access, and you create the actual physical part of going to fetch or logging into that place where you want to go. Secondly, you create then also the request or the request action. What it's going to actually do, you're going into that URL, it's a type of requested post, you create a header like say for example in a bearer token or something that you would use for your return. Secondly, then you put in some parameters. So this is something that's just an example to go write something back into the database, whatever that you would like it to be. It's very flexible in doing that, and when you're done with it, you save it, and basically then the automation is already in place, and you can then let it update automatically. What you'll see here is also an automation history. So it actually tells you It gives you a log of exactly when the automation happened, how it succeeded, it sent the email, and at what time, and basically you can understand anything, you can audit any of the automation that happens within your environment. So very powerful to be able to take data that is visual and convert it into actionable items back into your database or through an API or email to your users or wherever it needs to be managed. Very powerful stuff. Okay, so now that we've created the automation, we're going to create the schedule, which has been made already, but let's just go through it. So you'll see the frequency schedule is one of the components of your automation. And what we'll do is we'll go into the schedule and we're going to look at the automation schedule. So if we look here, we've already created this. So we go into the automation, and what we've created here, the automation schedule is called automation. The description is called automation. The schedule is weekly, but however you can change it daily, monthly, whatever the case may be. The schedule repeats in weekly on Wednesdays, and the start date is at a certain time at 19:08:14, and the end date we haven't put in an end date in here, and basically we said it's in time zone GMT +2, but you have the option to put in any time zones in that. You can also delete the schedule. So the schedule hasn't run yet, so it hasn't got an automation behind it, but this is really then how you actually get the automation running. There's a schedule that you program to say when the automation must run, and it can be in any increments that you obviously would want to do it. If I go back to the schedules, you will notice one important factor is that we haven't then associated with a dashboard, because this automation is running in the automation side and it's not running within a dashboard. We're not taking it because that automation has already taken place within the automation side. So you then schedule your automation to run as you want to and when you want to. So a very great feature for that. Okay, so great. We've then created the single KPIs that we can test against. We've created the automation setup, and we've created the schedule. So everything then is in place to be able to have this automation working in great order. So the only next step is to see the email that we basically received from it. So what I'm going to quickly do is flip to the email. Here's a couple of emails that I received. This is obviously the one that we received from our sales manager in terms of the normal scheduling. So we'll go down and we'll see here is an email that came in yesterday, and what it said to us is, hi, the current margin has dropped below 30% with a value of 29.53. So you can then give that to whoever uses it or send it whenever to your users, and they can have an action. You can also then go to the dashboard and investigate it further if that's something that you want to do. So just recapping quickly on the automation, very powerful stuff. You can create single KPIs that can test against each other. You can create an automation or a data-driven trigger, whether it be a static trigger or tested against some information that you have in the past. You can schedule it to be tested, and then you can have certain actions. Either it be an email, or you can have it that it posts to a database through an API, and being able to create value like that in the fly without having any human intervention. Really great stuff for users, and it's really something that's changed a lot of our customers' use of BI going forward, that you have this data-driven triggers when you need it and without people involved, which is fantastic. I just want to say thank you very much for listening, taking the time to listen to this session. If you find it valuable, subscribe to our YouTube, and whenever we make new videos, we'll do this. This will also be posted in the help folder within our application, and it'll be put onto all our different social media platforms. Thank you very much again, and speak soon.